Everybody, my name is Brooke Silverang. I'm a meteorologist with WPBF 25 News. I've been here for 5 almost hurricane seasons. I've been living obviously in Florida almost my entire life. And I ran a 5K this morning, so I'm like so I'm like a little winded, but all right, let's get started. Hurricane Ready event. So First Warning Weather Team, you have Chris Martinez, our chief, then you have Glenn Glazer, it's Sandra, Vanessa. We all love what we do, and we all love our communities that we talk to, and everyone's safety is really just so important to us. And so let's get to it. So far we have these early season forecasts, and these come out just a little bit before the actual main forecast. So the main one is the NOAA forecast, which will come out next week. But for now, we have Colorado State University, which does a pretty good job of predicting how many named storms there are going to be throughout the year. So again, it does tend to look a little bit on the above average side for named storms. And then out of that number, we could see about 9 hurricanes, so near average on that end, and then major hurricanes about 4. So major hurricanes are category 3 and higher. So again, still looking to be an above average season. So regardless of how many storms there are, all it takes is that one storm to impact us here in Florida. Yes. Yes. All right. So peak hurricane season is September 10th, and normally that's when we start to see the heightened activity where you're guaranteed a named storm somewhere in the Atlantic, in the Gulf, or in the Caribbean Sea. And that's when we really start to see the heightened activity from basically September all the way through October. And October is the month that typically Florida does see a landfalling or impactful hurricane or storm system. So that's why Florida, even though October we're nearing the end of the season, we still need to be on guard in this area. Anybody have any questions so far? Nope? Okay. So the differences between a watch and a warning is a watch, you want to be prepared, and then a warning is you want to make sure that you're already hunkered down, or if you are evacuating, that you're in the shelter or that you're already in place for the duration of the storm. So again, a watch gives you the time frame of when you need to start getting ready, and then a warning means it's happening. You're going to start to feel the impacts from tropical storm force winds or even hurricane force winds. So this just shows what a difference between what it looks like of a watch and a warning's in place. You'll see different colors kind of just highlighting our area. And you want to make sure that you're tuning into the news, that you're paying attention to what we're saying so that you know that you have the ample time to prepare or that you're okay in your location. So again, one of the biggest focuses this hurricane season is impacts, regardless, if storms go into the Gulf. We know that we still see some sort of impacts here on the East Coast, even though we could be hundreds of miles away from the center of the storm. So that's the biggest focus heading into this hurricane season. So something that you might see or hear us mention are potential tropical cyclones. And heading into this brand new hurricane season, normally this was issued about 48 hours out to a storm actually developing and making impacts. So this will be issued 72 hours out from when the storm actually develops. So it just gives you guys a little bit more of a headway instead of waiting until the last minute of like, oh, hey, the storm has a name. So this is kind of what they do so that if the storm doesn't have a name yet, people can still prepare ahead of time. So it's still going to look like the same track, but again, give you the heads up that, hey, in 4 to 5 days out, maybe we can start to see some tropical impacts from a storm that doesn't have a name yet. So this is what you'll see typically. You have the spaghetti plots, which is a bunch of different models showing the direction of the storm. And then when the models are early in the forecast, you start to see that tightening of the spaghetti plots, the lines. But then there becomes the uncertainty where after X amount of hours out, it kind of spreads out. So then that's when you know that there's a little bit of discrepancy between the models. But then once things are in better agreement, you have the cone, and then you can kind of gauge the intensity of the storm and then the movement of where the storm is heading. So when you're looking at a cone, you don't want to so much focus on where the icon of the storm is. It could be anywhere within the cone, and it normally center of the storm stays within the cone 2/3 of the time. Hello. Guys, this is Hannah. Say hi to Hannah. She's my photographer. Hi, Hannah. Does this make sense, guys? Yeah, so this is what you guys will see on TV. So again, the cone now will show as well the watches and warnings. So just to given that highlighted, impacts, again, that's what it's focusing more on heading into this hurricane season, are the impacts that we can see so people can prepare sooner than rather than later. So if you're under a hurricane watch, this is issued 48 hours in advance of tropical storm force winds. 74-mile-per-hour winds or higher are possible for your area. So you want to make sure that your preparations are almost near completion. And then if we're under a hurricane warning, this is issued 36 hours ahead of the tropical storm force winds, meaning we're expecting the 74-plus mile-per-hour wind conditions for the area. And you want to make sure that you're either already evacuated or that you're hunkered down in your home. So here are the different types of categories. We have Category 1, where winds are 74 miles per hour up to 95. Category 2, 96 to 110. And then I mentioned major hurricane, which would be a Category 3 through a Category 5. Winds can extend from 111 miles per hour up to 157 with a Category 5. So again, major hurricanes, you'll hear us mention this as we head into the hurricane season, especially as we head into July, August, September. That's when we tend to see hurricanes of this magnitude typically, or even October. So again, depending on where we are in the season, we'll see stronger storms. So here's just the structure of the hurricane. You have the eye. The eye wall is where you have the strongest winds of the storm. So whenever you hear your meteorologist or your officials say the storm is over 150 plus miles per hour, the eye of the storm is where you're seeing those strongest winds. And then you have, of course, the outer bands. And like we saw with Milton, the outer bands is what brought the tornadic activity to us here in Florida, even though the storm made landfall near the Tampa Bay area. So again, we're going to focus more on the impacts. Depending on where the storm does make landfall, you'll see different types of impacts in different areas. But given, again, that last scenario where it made landfall in the Gulf and the angle that it came in, we had the tornado outbreak, which was so rare for this area. So dealing with hurricanes or tropical storms or depressions, right? Given the magnitude of the storm, you have different types of impacts. So you have damaging winds, storm surge, excessive rainfall, which can lead to flooding, and the isolated tornado risk. So given, as I mentioned, the way that the storm makes landfall or comes onto land, you have different types of impacts. You kind of look at it as you break it up into like a 4 quadrants. So the northeast quadrant, you're seeing storm surge. And then on the southern quadrants, that's where you could see tornadic activity. Make sense? Storm direction? Yes. So obviously Florida, we're a hot spot because we have 3 bodies of water that surround us, typically. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about storm surge. We haven't really seen too much with this past hurricane seasons here, other than your typical, king tide, high tide running at the same time. We had Hurricane Nicole in 2022 when it made landfall. There was some storm surge. But whenever we have the storms coming in over the Gulf and over the west coast of Florida, again, it puts us at the higher risk for the tornadic activity. But if we had a storm coming in from the east coast, then you'll see a better chance of storm surge being one of our biggest risks. So this is the abnormal rise of water when the storm moves over land. It could be as high as 15 plus feet, as we saw with Hurricane Ian over the Fort Myers Beach area, which if you've all ever been out there, it was just such a devastating sight. I worked in Fort Myers for 3 years prior, so to see how much water in all the buildings that I've known are just completely wiped out still. So that's just the power of water. And it also does take lives. So that's something else too. So if you're in an area that does flood typically with just a summer rain day, and if you're issued an evacuation, then you want to make sure that you have a plan to evacuate, because if you stay home and the water's coming up, no one can rescue you. And it puts also the officials at risk. So keys with storm surge is you want to evacuate sooner than later. and it can rise as early as a day before the storm passes. High waters can still stick around. Again, I mentioned the king tide, which typically happens during the fall months. And then also you want to make sure that you want to be on higher ground as possible. You want to move your cars to maybe a garage or somewhere higher, or if you, again, you're evacuating, that you have that plan in place. So let's talk about some flooding tips. You want to make sure you're listening to your local news here at WPBF. Obviously, our goal is to keep you guys safe. And also your EOCs, your emergency operations offices, will make the calls if you need to evacuate or not. You want to never drive through flooded waters because you never know how high the water is. You never know what's in the water. You don't want to walk in that water that's flooding. And again, evacuation, if it is issued for your area, to take that seriously. I think this is a video.
75 hours of coverage.
We are watching very dangerous tornadoes on the ground.
More than 120 tornado warnings.
This is what I would consider a tornado outbreak.
First on air with continuous coverage.
We've got the full team here tracking every moment.
And we're going to stay with you all the way through this afternoon, through this evening.
So make sure you are indoors and in your safe place. This is historic. I don't think I've ever seen this.
That is that tornado we've been tracking.
WPBF 25, First Warning Weather. #1 in severe weather coverage.
All right, so again, that was this past hurricane season with Milton. It was something that we've all have never seen in our careers before. You know, given in Florida, Tornado Alley, different story, but for Florida, you know, it was just one of those situations where you expect maybe 3 or 4 quick spin-ups. At that day, we had over 60 plus warnings. We've had, the Treasure Coast alone had 19 confirmed tornadoes for Central Florida. That's not even including the South Florida tornadoes. So definitely something that we always stress is that we are at risk for this scenario. So that was Hurricane Milton. I have another video.
We've never seen something like this.
No, this outbreak really is unprecedented for us.
Employees are safe, I'm safe, my family's safe. So that's what's important, because we heard bad stuff.
I know.
All of a sudden I heard a rumble, and it was coming again. Born and raised here, and that was the first tornado I've seen in my life, and it was terrifying.
This is such a dire situation for so many people.
So I guess this is some videos showing the tornadoes that people took from their phones. And you can just see how fast it intensifies as it crosses over the highway there. You see the electric power lines blowing up as it crosses over the power lines. So again, it's always good to know the differences between a tornado watch and a tornado warning. And again, watches, the easiest way to think about it is if you have all the ingredients in place, they haven't come quite together just yet, but when they do come together, it means it's happening, and that's a warning. So if you're ever under a watch, that means any thunderstorm at that point or time could produce a tornado or a spin up in the scenario that we have a tropical system in the area. And sometimes, again, tornadoes can also be rain wrapped. And if it's a nighttime activity, it's a little trickier to spot on the radar. So again, these are some of the things that we look out for, and it's what we stress heavily for you and your safety. And you want to make sure you have a place in your home that's away from any windows, and also away from doors or anything that can lead outside. So the safest places to be in your home would be a bathroom, which typically don't have windows, or a closet. And you want to stay in there for the duration of the tornado warning. If a warning is issued, you'll get a big alert on your phone. Of course, we're on air throughout the duration of tornado warnings. We'll let you know where it's heading and what direction and what to do and how long to stay inside for. But even after warnings have passed, you still want to, be prepared if there's still more activity in the area. So Heading into the hurricane season, you always want to make sure you have your supplies ready ahead. You want to have a hurricane kit ready. You don't want to wait until like the last minute, but it's advised to have at least 3 to 5 days worth of supplies, and you want a gallon of water per person per day. And if you have any pets, you want to make sure that you have enough water for your pets as well. You want to also have your first aid kit ready to go, just in case if someone gets injured. You also want to make sure you have non-perishable food, so food that doesn't need to be heated up. You want to have all your important documents in one place, and also to keep them safe. And something that I've heard from other people that they do is they'll put stuff in their washer or dryer machine so that water doesn't get inside in case water does. So that's a good place to hide stuff if you need to put stuff that you don't want to get ruined or damaged out. And if you have obviously home and you have a generator, you want to make sure that you have enough fuel for your generator. We'll talk about this again, but if you have a generator, you want to use it at least 20 feet away from your home, outside, never run it inside a house. So if you have any pets and you plan on evacuating, there are some shelters that do provide places for your pets and for yourself. So you want to call ahead of time so that you have a place for your animals, because pets are family too. You never want to leave dogs or cats or any animals outdoors. If you're going to be hunkering down inside, make sure that your pets are obviously with you, and you want to have enough food and water for them as well. And maybe if you have small dogs, pee-pee pads, so that, if you can't walk them, they'll have a place to go to the bathroom. But again, you want to make sure that your pets are safe. And then let's talk about what happens after a storm. So you're going to have probably down power lines. You're going to have down trees. In this case, you want to wait for officials to tell you if it's safe to go to your home if you've evacuated. If you do go back to your home, it might take days for you guys to get any help. So you want to also be patient, but that's why it's good that you're going to have your hurricane kit ready to go with the food and the water in case of this scenario. And never walk or drive through flooded roadways. And back to the generator tips, you want to avoid operating it indoors. You want to make sure that it's outside and at least 20 feet away from your home. And we have the WPBF 25 guide that you can download on your phone, or you can access through our website. It's going to have all the information that you need. And if you want to see if you're in a flood zone or if you are in the evacuation zone, zone A, zone B, zone Z, we have that information provided there. And of course, we have all the information for the Red Crosses and the EOCs for each area. So some of the things that you guys can do at your home is create a disaster plan. So what's going to happen if this scenario is playing out? What will you be doing so that you're already ready? If you have family that live in other places, you want to let them know what you're going to be doing so they'll have, a way to keep touch of you. If you have an iPhone, you could share locations so that they can see your locations. I think that's always a really good thing to do. And this is, again, if you plan on staying in your home. If you go to a shelter, obviously that'll offer the protection if you don't feel safe in your home, or if you're issued an evacuation. So yeah, this is just going over your insurance plan and going over your coverage plan so that you know what's covered, what's not covered, if you need to get something covered. Oh, I guess that's it. Yep. All right. So, it's a lot of information, I know. Do you guys have any questions? Yes. Right. So you can, if the internet's down, so she just asked if Xfinity is down, what can we do? So we're going to be doing updates on the radio. So if you have a radio or any access to like a hand battery radio, that's ways that you guys can receive information if your internet's down or if your power's out. We always have the radio. So again, batteries now still always very useful. Okay, yeah, any other questions?
Discussing the tracking of a storm.
Yes.
When you have the different models, is there like a storm tracker that's like out in the ocean to say these are the different types of paths? I just always wanted to know how.
Oh, of course. So what we do day to day is we look at things called models. Okay, so the models, basically you have your American run model, the GFS, you have the European model, and then you have a bunch of other little models. This year they've been experimenting with AI, which pulls information as well. But we're constantly looking at the models, which ones that we think have the best trends. So that's which ones we're able to identify the path of which storms. But typically the National Hurricane Center is the one that puts out the cone. But we have access to see where the storms are heading, what impacts we could probably get in a couple days out from this storm happening. So once you start seeing all the models kind of agreeing on what is happening, then you have a better idea. And then you kind of are able to pinpoint the timing of the impacts. And then again, knowing which direction the storm is heading, we'll know what impacts we can see in Florida. If we have an East Coast landfalling system, you're going to get storm surge, winds. If we have that West Coast scenario, if you have a panhandle storm, you can see outer bands expanding about 500 miles from the center of the storm, 200, 300 miles. Again, those outer bands can have tornadic activity. And if they hit land at a certain angle, a certain point, then we see that tornado activity. Of course, no, ask away.
When you predict the storms, are you using those models because the screen said maybe this year 4 actual storms to go from the highest number to say, okay, for this year we're going to have 3 or 4 storms. Are those models playing into?
So what they're looking at with that are long-term models. You're looking at global patterns. So you've all heard of La Nina, El Nino. Right now we're in a La Nina neutral phase. So we're kind of still in the La Nina influence. If we have a strong El Nino, that creates a lot of wind shear, which tears storms apart. But if we're heading into the hurricane season, which is kind of what we're gearing into, where we're still in that La Nina phase, but the ocean temperatures are still very warm, again, you can still see a lot of activity. So we're looking at those global patterns as well. So that's why this season so far, they're predicting slightly above average for named storms. And then because of those global patterns is what you're looking at. And then an average hurricane season can produce 14 named storms, but sometimes we've seen as little as 5 or 6 for the whole season.
Is that impacting our rainy season now?
So right now, rainy season doesn't officially start until May 20th, May 15th. So that's the afternoon thunderstorms every single day. But typically, if we're in that peak summertime, we also have other factors like Saharan dust, which also helps limit storm formation. Yeah, I know it's a lot of stuff. I know it's very a lot of. But I guess the biggest takeaway from us as meteorologists again is that if a storm's making landfall somewhere in the Panhandle of Florida, in the Gulf Coast, then we know that we still see some sort of impacts depending on how far away, how strong the storm is for the East Coast of Florida, even though we're hundreds of miles away. So again, we didn't see any direct impacts last year, but we had all these indirect impacts from Gulf storms. Any questions over here? It's a lot. Okay.
I think residents should be aware that Lake Park has a internet software information program called Code Red, and people should be aware to sign up for those because all of this is about information flow.
Right.
And Lake Park's Code Red program is a nationally recognized process for notifying local residents of situations immediately in their area. So residents should be aware. Number 2 is about preparedness. I'm a retired emergency management professional from Wisconsin, and I've seen people, run to the grocery store when they think that things are going to get rough, and they buy all this stuff. And you mentioned about perishables or non-perishables, so that's really important. But I've also seen people buy a bunch of food, put it in their freezer to get ready for the storm, and then the electricity goes out.
Right.
And so a friendly reminder is that when you're going to buy all this food, cook it fully. Put it in your refrigerator, hope for the best. But even when the power goes out, you have food that you could actually cook,
right,
actually eat because you cooked it in advance.
Right.
And I've seen that as an oversight too often in my experience in emergency management. Last question is, some of us are quite concerned about proposed administration cuts to federal programs around meteorology and notices. I presume that if that were to fully happen, that there are university programs and local news resources that will make up for some of the slack that might occur if these administration cuts occur.
Right.
Am I on the right path with that?
Yeah. There are concerns. There definitely are some concerns with that.
But there are ways.
I mean, our job ultimately, like, we're not working for the government. We are just working for our news stations, but it's still our goal to deliver that message and get it out. I mean, obviously, if they start cutting hurricane hunter flights, you're not getting the exact data that you need from these storms, then we're going to really start to see the impacts. But for now, those have not been cut just yet.
Yeah, but my point is
Right.
that there are backup
Right.
ideas, even if the cuts occur.
Right.
At university programs and within local
Right.
meteorological societies and news that can make up for some of that slack, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, one thing I want to mention, thank you very much for mentioning
Of course.
Code Red. Another suggestion that we make during hurricane season is go to the Palm Beach County, I think it's ready.gov website, and you can sign up for alerts directly from Palm Beach County.
Yes.
And there's a lot of good information on that website about how to prepare, and we'll be pushing out some information about that as well prior to the start of hurricane season.
Good. Very good. I mean, you guys, again, are so proximity close to water, right? So those are definitely, this area is vulnerable, of course. So it's always good to have ways to receive alerts in any way. Of course, from the county, we'll provide alerts, and then we provide our alerts, our push alerts. If you have our app downloaded on our phone, we'll let you know what's happening and if there's any warnings or things you need to know or any big updates with the systems. Yeah. So, any questions? Hope this was helpful. Sure.
Does your news station offer weather spotter programs?
We do have a weather spotter thing. If we got your email, we can work on it together, because I know that we've been trying, or Chris Martinez has worked on having a weather spotter. Are you a weather spotter?
Having been in emergency
Yeah.
management.
So you know, yeah.
Right.
Good. Awesome. Okay. Well, that was my presentation. Thank you guys.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Can you guys get a picture with me? Do you guys want to be in a picture? Anybody?